In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these modular tiles for your favorite tabletop war game. So recently I bought Marvel's Crisis Protocol, and I posted a video on how to speed paint them using Citadel's contrast colors. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and click here. But I wasn't going to get this game originally because I didn't need any more two-player games because my gaming group is 5 or 6 of us, and so it's hard to get two-player games on the table. But I ended up grabbing this game for 2 reasons. One is you can actually play multiple people at the same time. In fact, we had 5 people over and each one of us played 2 heroes on 2 teams, and it worked out super well, and so I'm glad that this game can be more than just 2-player. But the other reason why I picked up this game is a reason that some people actually find annoying, but I am pretty excited about, and that is these miniatures are 40 millimeter, so larger than your typical 28 or 32 millimeter scale. And the reason for why I'm excited about that is because I knew that you could use O-scale terrain. And in another video, I'm going to highlight and showcase the actual buildings that's available for this game. But in this video, I'm going to show you first how to make this modular board. I am a fan of neoprene mats, the manufactured ones, and the place that I normally get my mats from is Table War. But I was surprised after I bought this game to find that there aren't a lot of modern cityscape mats that are available. So what I did was I went over to Fat Dragon Games and downloaded their city package and used their floor tiles for creating a map. And I was going to play in a couple of days, and so I needed a really quick solution. I took those files and I imported them over to Photoshop, and I stitched together a map that I took over to Kinko's. They have a 3-foot wide self-service printer that you can use, and pretty much printed out this map for less than $8. And so this was a really quick and easy solution to creating a workable mat until I could figure out a more long-term solution. Color is a lot more expensive to print off at Kinko's, and I think it was going to be close to $70 to print it out in color. And so I knew I was going to get a neoprene mat later, so I just did black and white for less than $8. So that's a great solution if you need something quickly. But obviously, with awesome scenery like this, I wanted a better solution for the actual streets. And so there's a number of videos that are already out there. I think Sarastro has one. The Terrain Tutor, I think, originated with how to build. But that required painting, that required cutting wood, all that kinds of stuff. And so I was looking for a solution where you didn't need to do any kind of painting and didn't require cutting wood. Now, I will say that it is probably faster and cheaper to DIY and use those methods from those other videos. But if you don't have access to a table saw, or if you don't want to paint or anything like that, I think this is a relatively cool solution. And the advantage of this is very modular. And so these are 8-inch squares, and you're going to see that we can set up almost any kind of layout that we want using these modular squares. Originally, I was just going to print out each of the squares as is, and I was going to lay them down on the tabletop without really much editing, but I noticed that even though I printed it out on cardstock, the edges sort of raised up, and it was going to be hard to keep all of these squares together. I knew I was going to have to mount these anyway on this foam board, but since I was going to mount it, I thought, well, why not go ahead and raise all of the sidewalks? And so I think adding that little bit of depth adds a whole lot to the scenery. I think this was a really good solution, and even after making these, I figured out that making them double-sided actually even creates greater efficiency. Now, you don't have to print out as many as I did, but I have enough tiles to basically have a 4-foot by 4-foot, possibly even larger than that. Obviously the game is 36 by 36. Because each one of these is only 8 inches wide, if you're going to go 4 by 4, it's going to be 4 inches too small on each side. Or if you go 5 by 5, 25 of these tiles, then you're going to be 4 inches too wide. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I found that the first round, you're trying to go up and engage the enemy anyway. And so having a little bit smaller board, I think is perfectly fine. But because these are modular, you can make your board size as big or as small as you need. And I think this is still a great option. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and dive into how you can make this. It isn't that hard to do, but it is a little bit time consuming, so just be prepared for that. All right, so the first thing you want to do is go to fatdragongames.com and head on over to paper terrain and go down and click modern. And then come down here to the Capital City base set and click on that. And you want to go ahead and hit purchase, and it'll direct you to Drive-Thru RPG, and it's $14 to get it. Now you're going to get not only the floor tiles, but all of these buildings as well. While you're still here, you can go ahead and choose to purchase McDooms, because I do use this parking lot space as part of my tiles. Now, there's only 3 of them that I use. You don't have to use them. But also, if you want this building, which I think looks cool too, it's only $5. So feel free to pick that up. You don't have to get that if you don't want to. After you download it, what you'll see is it will open up in a Acrobat folder. And one of the cool things about this is if you come over here to the layer section, and you can go to take out parts of it that you don't want. And I cleaned up my tiles pretty well. I didn't want a bunch of junk on there. So for example, if you want to get rid of the grid, you just click on that, and you can pick and choose what you want and don't want. And so I got rid of the body outline and most of the litter, but you can pick and choose what you want. You can keep these cracks or not. You can get rid of this. So there's a lot of choices that you can make. And I chose to do 3 different sort of straight street styles, and sort of mix and matched what kind of stuff was on there. So go ahead and pick what you want. Now this is where I'm not sure. Those of you who know how to use Acrobat Reader might be able to tell me how to do this, but when I save this file, I thought that it would save all of my preferences, but it doesn't do that. It goes back to the default with all of that stuff on these files. And so when I went over to Office Depot to print them out, I couldn't figure out how to make it so that on their automated machines it would print out the file that I wanted. So what I ended up doing, and I'm sure there's a less clunky way of doing this, after I got it to where I wanted, I just basically used my snipping tool, and I grabbed a screenshot of the tile that I wanted. And there's 2 reasons for this. One is default, this will print too small. And so I think the scale is 7 inches wide here. Now, if you wanted to print directly without modifying any of the files, you could, I think, go to custom scale. And I think to make this 8 inches across, you can make this maybe 114 or 113. You'd have to check it out, but I'm going to cancel that. And instead, what I ended up doing was just grabbing it and inserting it into Word, measuring it out so that it's exactly 8 inches wide in Word, converting it back to a PDF through Word, and then taking it to the store and printing it out that way. So again, those of you who know how to work Acrobat Reader, maybe you guys can tell me how to save those files so that it has all of the edits that I want, so that you can skip those steps. But pretty much the goal is to make these exactly 8 inches across. Once you do that, go ahead and go to your favorite printer, or maybe you have a printer that you can use. And I did make color copies. Again, I spent about $25 in color copies to make all of the tiles that I wanted. And I'll put up a list of the number of prints that I made here so that you can see. But again, I made way more tiles than you will need, especially if you're only doing a 4x4, which requires 16 tiles only. Again, I made mine double-sided as well, and if you choose to do that, of course, you're going to have 32 prints that you're going to have to make. But it's all up to you what you want to do, so make sure you go ahead and do that. So I was going to originally do the prints in black and white since most of it was grayish in color, but as you can see here, I think they turned out too dark, so I went ahead and did color copies instead, even though it cost more. I think because of all the work that I was investing, it was worth the extra money rather than saving on these black and white ones. So next I'm going to show you what materials you need to be able to work with this. And the first thing is that you need a knife as well as a ruler, some glue. I use a nice metal ruler since I'm going to be making cuts. And here's my knife, but you can use an X-Acto knife. Anything that's sharp will work. And then I just use simple glue, stick glue, and I find that works fine. And then use a cutting mat like I have here. If you don't have one of those, just use a board or cardboard. And then this is the foam core. Black foam core is what I get, and this is $3 a sheet at my local Walmart. And go ahead, if you're only going to be making 16 squares, or I'm sorry, 18 squares, because you can get 6 squares out of each one of these sheets, you only need to grab 3 of them, and that'll make you 18 of them. And then here I'm marking off exactly 8 inches. And I'm using my knife to mark the board just by pressing it in a little bit and leaving a cut. That way I can get really precise measurements here. And so exactly at 8 inches is what I'm measuring off. And because my little 18-inch ruler can't span the entire width, I go ahead and grab my drywall ruler to make the cut. If you don't have one, just go ahead and use your smaller ruler. Just slide it up and down in order to make the cut off of this board. And the trick to cutting foam core is rather than one deep cut, you're making multiple shallow cuts. And the reason why you want to do this is because if you try to do it in one deep cut, you're going to mess up the foam that's in between the boards. And this way, by doing smaller shallow cuts, you're actually creating a much cleaner edge. And so that's why you want to cut like this. And obviously you're going to cut 2 more times to get 3 of these total, and you'll have some left over that you're going to use later on. But here I'm marking off 8 inches and then 16 inches, and we'll be making cuts here as well. And this time I just use my smaller ruler to do that. So these are the 2 boards that you're going to get out of this piece. And then I am marking off the width of my sidewalks. And you're going to want to go ahead and measure your sidewalks to see how wide they are. But for me, you can see it's a 1/16 of an inch smaller than 1.5. And so sorry I don't have the centimeters there for you. But I go ahead and mark the other side, and I cut these strips down, and they're going to go on the edges of the board to hold the sidewalks. And this is for the straight piece, the straight road piece. So they go on the sides like this. And then next you're going to go ahead and grab the graphic and cut it out. And obviously it's a lot simpler to cut regular paper, so you don't have to go back and forth making multiple cuts. Just one clean cut usually does it. Be very careful handling these razor blades as they are very, very sharp. And then once you cut that, go ahead and cut out the sidewalks. And then you're going to use your glue stick here and do one side. You want to do just one side at a time, and in a moment you'll see why you don't do both sides first. And this glue stick is running out. Have to get a new piece, but go ahead and put one of the risers for the sidewalk on the edge here. So once that's done, you're going to go ahead and glue down the graphic for the road, just making sure the edges are good. I don't glue the whole thing, just the edges. And then now I put in this other riser. And here's the reason why. See right on the edge, you're going to actually overlap the graphic. And if you had put both of these down first, you wouldn't have had space to put the road graphic down. So that's why I do it in this order. And then go ahead and put your sidewalks down on the edges. Again, I don't put glue, go too crazy with the glue, and just do the edges as well. So once that's done, I'm gonna, because I do mine double-sided, I'm gonna go ahead and put down my sidewalk that has no road on it, and I put it on the back. And for those of you who are only doing 16 tiles, 3 sheets of this foam core, you don't want to do double-sided because I don't think you'll have enough. And then here for the corners, this is the T-junction. It's a little bit different. So after you cut out the sidewalk like you normally do, you're going to have to hand cut the corners unless you have a circle cutter, which I don't have. So I just very carefully use my razor and just cut it by hand. And then you're going to want to glue them onto a scrap piece of foam core. And I just use a corner and then hand cut as well. And this is a total pain in the butt. And you're going to mess up the foam core a little bit doing this because there's no quick way to do it. But you just follow the corner, and that's basically how you do those. And then you glue it on the same way as you did the straightaway. And after you put the road down, that's when you put the corners in. And I didn't double side these T-junctions because it doesn't have a lot of support underneath, and so if there's heavy objects, I didn't want it to warp the board on the other side when it was flipped over. So I only double-sided my straightaways and my corners, but this is a corner. And here I'm not showing you how I cut it, but I cut it by hand like I did, and so it takes a little bit longer to do this. And then you're using a scrap piece, one of the leftover pieces of foam core, in order to put it underneath the sidewalk section here. And because you don't have a big enough piece, an 8-inch by 8-inch piece, I had to glue a smaller piece on the edge. These are the parking lot tiles that I got from the McDoom file. And here it only has a sidewalk on one edge. This is the corner piece, and this is the other edge piece. And so they just line together. You can either do this configuration or a corner, and that's where the McDoom's restaurant goes on the corner there. And here's a couple of samples of what you can do. And I think the modularity really enables you to be creative and set it up the way that you need to. And the other building that I'm using here is from the Cityscape, or the Capital City files, and so that'll just show you that with just the purchase of Fat Dragon's files, this is what you can make. So very modular. I'm super happy with how it turned out. So there you have it. Pretty much this is my solution to creating a custom board that is highly modular, as well as does not require any painting or cutting of wood. So tell me what you think about this solution in the comments below. Also, I'll have a lot of links to the equipment and supplies that I used, as well as Fat Dragon's website. And so if you're interested in that, look at the links below. Also, in future videos, I am going to highlight the cars that I purchased, where I got those, as well as the scenery options. And so subscribe so that you can stay tuned with those videos that are coming out that will hopefully help you make this game a lot better. So thanks for tuning in, subscribe, check out my Patreon page, and we'll see you next time.